I may have just found the most affordable mid-tower PC case with a tempered glass side panel. Will it be a stud or will it be a dud? Keep watching and let's find out. I discovered Cougar's MX330-G several months ago when I was looking for a budget case that still had a glass side panel. Structurally and aesthetically, it's very similar to Enermax's Grace Mesh case, which is no longer available. And it's the reason why I suggested the MX330-G as a cost-effective alternative in my $450 build. Because it is a budget case coming in at $44.99, you're not going to find a lot of extras in this case, such as cable grommets or a refined mounting system for the glass panel. However, if you do want glass over acrylic, Cougar's MX330-G might be the right case for you.
The case is made from a mixture of steel and plastic, and it's fairly rigid with not a lot of flex. The glass panel is held on by 4 thumb screws
that have a rubber gasket in between the screw and the glass panel to avoid scratching. The glass panel does go all the way pretty much to the top of the case where it starts to bend, and to the very bottom, overlapping the feet, which this kind of is not a fan of. It's a little tacky here. Like, it would have been nicer had the feet, just either the case itself or the glass panel, been augmented in some way so as to not be just a square, I guess.
So in the course of my research and editing this video, I ended up finding out, at least from what it looks like, I might have received the incorrect glass panel for this case. If you look at the page for the product, the glass panel is pretty much flush to the frame, there's different screws used, and it doesn't overlap the feet at all. I've contacted Cougar about this via Twitter and also their RMA department via email, so hopefully I can get a replacement panel at no, cost to me, since I didn't do anything. I don't really want to have to return the case to Newegg since there's nothing else wrong with it, it's just the incorrect glass panel. I think what bothers me the most about this, besides of course the inconvenience factor, is that this shows maybe a lack of quality control within Cougar, and this is something you need to be wary of. Granted, you could always use the phrase you get what you paid for, and this is a very inexpensive case, but come on Cougar, at least match the right glass panel to it.
Well, that's a good thing. So it looks like we have 4 little, they almost look like standoffs here to mount the glass to, so you can actually align it up and then mount it. So unlike the Grace Mesh case, which was better mounted through gravity assist by basically just lying the case flat, looks like here you get the assistance of these pegs that will help make mounting the panel back much easier. Now the panel does seem to have a bit of a tint to it, so if you don't have any RGB or LED fans, you're not going to see your components very well. Now let's get a close-up of this thumb screw itself. Okay, these are all metal and they seem to be kind of a brushed look to it, so it's a bit more refined than what the Enermax case had, which just had your basic thumb screws. And another thing about the glass panel is there is no black border, so you will see your frame all the way around. Again, not really a fan of that, but what can you expect from a case that costs $45? When it comes to removing the front panel, you want to be very careful because the front I/O is attached to the panel. This is a design I'm not a huge fan of because of the risk of accidentally yanking those wires. So from the bottom, you'll just hopefully, just carefully, there we go, pull it free. Kind of do that. There we go. I'm not going to actually remove it from there. So then you have your dust filter here. It does not. No, this does not look like you would remove it because you have metal tabs here folded over it. So basically, you would just unfold this, use an air can or whatever, a data vac, spray it clean, and you're good to go. So again, be very careful when you are removing this front panel. All right, just pop this back. Okay. The rear panel is held on by 2 screws, both thumb screws, and they are also not captive. So I'll just take these off, and these are plastic as well. This comes right off. And then on the back, you can see what we get here. So we have our accessory bag, which looks like we have PCI slot, our screws, the manual. It's in a nice Ziploc bag at least, so that's nice. Here we have all our front I/O, our drive cage. This is plastic. No hard drive can be mounted toollessly, so you're going to need to use the included screws. And the drive cage is not movable, so that's a shame. The top of the case is perforated with larger honeycomb patterned holes, and there's a magnetic filter that comes with this case that lies flush on the top. The case does come with a bottom filter. It's held on through clips. You're not going to find any fancy sliding mechanism here for the budget of this case, but it gets the job done and allows you to put your PSU fan side down so it can intake fresh air. If we look at the feet of the case, they are made of plastic and they do come with a no slip pad, which is good so that your case doesn't slide around on your desk or scratch it. Being case feet, the feet height give you roughly about ½ an inch of clearance from the ground, or more or less 1 centimeter. This might not be enough height to actually leave the case on the ground, as it won't have enough breathing room on the bottoms. And because of the case's narrow profile, it shouldn't take too much room on your desk anyway, so I recommend just putting it there to begin with. The Cougar MX330-G is a mid-tower case, as previously mentioned, and measures 427 millimeters deep, 195 millimeters wide, and 473 millimeters in height. As far as motherboard support goes, the 330G supports ATX, M-ATX, and ITX motherboards. For the most part, standoffs for ATX motherboards come pre-installed, so if you go with a smaller motherboard, you'll need to remove some and reposition others. I say for the most part because there's actually only 6 standoffs installed total, and an ATX motherboard has 9 holes, so you're gonna have to put in 3 extra standoffs. As far as the front I/O goes, on top is the power button, and front facing are the reset button, 2 USB 3.1 Gen 1 ports, 2 USB 2.0 ports, a 3.5mm mic jack, and a 3.5mm headphone jack. There's also a disk activity and power light. The MX330G can hold a total of 4 hard drives. The availability of 2 hard drives in the cage at the bottom. You can put 2 3.5-inch hard drives here, or 2 2.5-inch hard drives. On the rear side, you can also mount 2 2.5-inch drives right here and here. If you have a SSD worth showing off, maybe something that has some RGB bling in it, such as Team Group's Delta RGB or Delta Max SSD, you might be able to mount these hard drives on the front side of the case. However, you may run into some fan clearance issues. Installation is not toolless, so you'll need to use the included screws to mount your drives. The hard drive cage is right up against the front, which is probably why you're limited on radiator and fan sizes up front, and as already discussed, unfortunately this is not removable or movable at all. And I find that is a shame, because you have enough space down here that you might be able to get away with maybe moving the cage a good inch or 2 over, while still having plenty of room for a PSU and to shove those cables in. When it comes to GPU support, you can install GPUs up to 350 millimeters in length. Also keep in mind that the PCI covers for this case are one and done covers, meaning basically you're going to have to bend the metal back and forth to break these off, and then you're not going to be able to reinstall them. However, cheap replacement PCI covers can be bought off Amazon, and I'll post a link in the description below. And if you plan on air cooling your CPU, you'll have a clearance of 155 millimeters. The MX330G supports standard ATX PSUs up to a length of 200 millimeters. As this is a budget case, it's safe to say you're probably going to be installing a non-modular PSU. As such, be conscious of the PSU you get, as you may not have a lot of room to stow away excess cables. Speaking of cable management, there are no cable grommets, but that's just not to be expected for a case at this price point. However, there are plenty of holes to pass cables through, and you get a total of 12 tie-down points to cinched cables too. I'll show you. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. The motherboard cutout is also generous, and while the back of the case is very shallow, the back panel has a generous outdent to route cables too. As far as fan support goes, the MX330G can hold 5 fans, but you are limited to using only 120mm fans. You can install 2 fans at the front, 2 at the top, and 1 fan in the rear, which is included. This is a 3-pin fan. Had Cougar not implemented the 5¼ drive bay, I bet the case could have easily been able to hold a third 120mm fan, or possibly expanded to hold 2 140mm fans. The radiator support is just as limited as your fan support. If you want to liquid cool your PC with an AIO or a custom loop, the case can hold a 240 or 120mm radiator in the front, 120mm radiator up top, and 120mm radiator in the rear. Your best bet is to probably stick to an AIO, as I don't see any mounting points for things such as a pump or reservoir in the case. Of course, that's not to say you couldn't drill some holes and make your own mounting points. However, ultimately I just think this case is too narrow and too lacking in the ability to be able to sufficiently have a custom water cool loop. However, I'd love to see some builds that totally prove me wrong. As far as accessories go, things were kept pretty simple with the MX330G. You get some included zip ties, a PCI slot cover, and a bag full of screws that will also contain some extra standoffs, screws for the PSU, for the motherboard, and an extra thumb screw. When it comes to the manual, it is one-sided black and white. It'll basically tell you what you get with the case right here. It'll have some pictures for installation and compatibility, and then also will tell you what each part is. Cougar's MX330G is a very affordable case for one with a glass side panel. It has loads of features such as 7 PCI slots for expandability, ample front I/O, and can accommodate a plethora of fans. Now, while it doesn't have USB Type-C, I just wouldn't expect that from a case at this price point. Speaking of price point, if you can find this case at $44.99 and you're looking for a new case to make a PC, pounce on it. I wouldn't pay anything over $55, and I have seen the price vary due to the volatility of the PC component market, going as high as $70. Here's some features and improvements I'd like to see in a future iteration of the 330G. Remove the 5¼ drive bay. Doing so will allow for the installation of possibly a third fan or the use of 2 140mm fans. Optical drives are just a thing of the past, and there's not enough use cases for them anymore. Unless you buy this specifically for an office use and you need that CD or Blu-ray drive, there's just no need for it. Secondly, make the hard drive cage at the bottom repositionable or removable altogether. This will allow for users to go ahead and use a longer radiator or an additional fan. Of course, in tandem, you'd have to go ahead and cut out this little metal area along with it. Third, I'd like to see the front I/O redone. I don't like it attached to the front panel. There's just too much risk of straining or completely ripping out a wire. Never been a fan of this design from any manufacturer, and I don't like seeing it here, even in a budget build. And then finally, put a black border around the glass panel. It will give it a more refined look and make it even more elegant, because then we won't see the case frame, which I'm not a huge fan of either. Additionally, with the glass panel, I think you could refine it to not jut out from the bottom of the case and actually kind of shrink it so it's flush with the frame on all ends. Well, that's all I have to say about Cougar's MX330G. Thanks for watching, everybody. Like the video if you liked it, leave any comments or questions you have down below. Show your support for the channel by hitting that subscribe button, and don't forget to click the notifications icon so that you don't miss out on any future content. I'm Seth, and I'll see you next time in the middle of nowhere.